Hello, it is Thursday, July 10th, 2014 at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and this is Marketing Live. Marketing Live is part of a Higher Ed Live network. This is a series of professional development web shows and podcasts, which are always free and accessible to you at the archives of higheredlive.com and on iTunes. Be a part of our broadcast by tuning in live and sharing your insights and questions using the Higher Ed Live hashtag on Twitter. You can receive weekly updates with live show dates and times by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter. Today's show would not be possible with the support of Michigan State University and M. Stoner. Higher Ed Live is produced by N. Stoner, a marketing communications firm that works with educational institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. In June, M. Stoner is hosting an in-depth two-part webinar series focused on brand strategy, so make sure to check out those that are posted online. They're also tweeting out a link where you can learn more and see all of that information. Our sponsor is Formstack. Formstack is a robust online form building solution. With an intuitive drag-and-drop interface, the platform makes it easy for marketers to create branded, mobile-ready web forms without writing code. Build donation forms, contact forms, event registrations, and more with the web's only 508 compliant form builder. Publish your forms and leverage Formstack's social media plugins to maximize your traffic. With an in-app analytics and integrations with popular marketing tools, you can get even more out of your captured responses. Visit www.formstack.com to learn more about the great ways Formstack can double your response rate. So this show is the best way that the best web forms for more student engagement. Today we are joined by Chris Lucas, Vice President of Marketing at Formstack, to discuss key findings from the company's new form conversion report. The report features data from 400,000 plus online form users on how to make your higher ed forms more conversion friendly. Chris will share proven data on how to get more responses on your applications, event registrations, and other forms. So welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Amy, for having me. I appreciate it.
This is great. So let's jump right into some of the questions. Now, if you have any questions at any time during our show, please tweet to us using the hashtag HigherEdLive on Twitter, and Chris and I will do our best to answer any of your questions. So the first question is we'll probably want to devote some time to talking about what Formstack is and how our forms best fit for higher ed marketers. So could you address some of that?
Yeah, so as you kind of said, we're sponsors of Higher Ed Live and Marketing Live. So we are an easy-to-use online form builder, so we make it very easy for digital marketers and folks in higher ed to build anything from a survey to event registration. And really, you know, what we're trying to bring to the table is an easy way for people to collect more. And when I say collect more, it's more survey responses, more event registrations, and so what we try to do is take the friction out of that form process, right? Forms aren't really thought of much. You know, everybody puts a lot of time into landing pages and a lot of the marketing programs that go around forms, but forms are really, when you think about it, they're the gateway to interactions with customers, students, whoever you're marketing to. And so Formstack kind of takes the pain and the friction out of that process. And so what we're trying to do, specifically in higher ed, is try to teach folks what are ways that, and what some of the things that the form conversion report talks about are, what are some of the easy things that you can do in your online forms that make it easy for people to start an engagement with you, right? Whether it's students, whether it's alumni, faculty, whatever. It's all about getting that information into the online form, and so the conversion report kind of addresses a lot of pain points in form creation and some of those aspects.
Very, very cool. I can tell you, forms would definitely make my job a lot easier if we were using them effectively.
Well, and that's funny because everybody has a need for forms, right? And you talk about online forms and like, wow, how does a business exist around forms? But it does, because they're so critical to kind of starting that engagement process.
I need you to be talking to all the bosses at my university to help me convince them of some of that.
I'm more than happy to come to talk to anybody. So.
Perfect. Well, additionally, we probably want to give, would you be willing to give a 60-second rundown on the form conversion report that is, I just think that, honestly, I went through all the information. It's really, really cool information. I've been tweeting about it for the past couple of weeks. So give all of us a little bit of a rundown on that.
Yeah, so really it was, so as we kind of looked at the landscape out there, we said, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of attention given to, how do I have to optimize my landing pages or optimize my email marketing? And not a lot of people are talking about forms. And obviously we have a vested interest in people talking about forms, but really there are some very simple things that people can do to optimize the way that people engage with web forms, whether it's the number of fields or some of the other things that we'll get to in terms of like submit buttons and things like that. But really we wanted to dig into, we have a ton of user information. We want to say, what are the best ways to utilize online forms? And so the form conversion report was taking a look at that and just saying, how can we educate the marketplace on ways that they can use forms smarter, better, and more streamlined to create a better user experience for their students, faculty, customers, whatever it is.
That's great. So what led you to research and compiling the data in this report?
Yeah, so really, when we were talking about research, it was the fundamental question of what are the ways that forms can be smarter, right? And we wanted to make it educational, and so we dug into the data and said, what are the numbers telling us on the ways that people submit forms, the way that people promote their forms? But then also we wanted to say, what are some very easy kind of diagnostic things that we can tell people? And so as we jumped into some of the data, it was like what times are more effective for promoting your forms, and how do submit buttons work within forms and things like that. So that was really around the research and the compilation. And a lot of it is customers also, Formstack customers want to know how are they comparing against industries, right? In email marketing, they have a lot of statistics that talk about one industry versus another, and what are good open rates and what are good click-through rates. And there's not a lot of information on the conversion side of that, and so that's also another reason why we want to take a look at this.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see a infographic on Pinterest with all the form data soon, right?
we have a bunch of stuff coming out. We actually have an infographic or interactive page that we're about to launch that has a little bit of this stuff in it, and then we'll share it across infographics and all a whole other visual elements. But this kind of data is great for kind of a visual standpoint, right? It makes really compelling conversation starters, at least.
I love my infographics. It's a quick way to give out a whole bunch of information.
Yes.
So,
yes.
One of the major data points in this report that you've been marketing is the ability to increase response rate by 250%. And for those of us out there that have not worked in marketing, holy cow, that response rate of 250% is amazing. We're lucky right now if we can get a response rate in emails of 5%. So 250% of increasing, that's amazing. So you're doing that by simply replacing just one word. So can you expand on this research and how that might apply to our higher ed audience? Because that's awesome.
Yeah, well, it really is, and I think one of the most interesting things, and so what that data point is around the submit button, right? Not a lot of people think about the words. We think about a lot of the ad copy that we put around our marketing programs and how we're driving students to fill out surveys or whatever it is, but we don't think about testing some of those little things. And when you think about submit, right? Most forms have submit on their button, but it's who wants to submit to anything, right? That's kind of why would anybody just submit, right? And so there are some very simple things that you can do in online forms, and one of those is changing the wording on that button. And what it is it's talking about creating more engaging interaction, right? And so if you're filling out a survey, why not say, enter our survey, or get more information, or whatever that call to action is. It's about putting that call to action in that submit button. And so really it's about testing your way through some very easy word changes and copy changes on your online forms to make things stand out and to get people to click more. And so what we found was by simply changing the wording on the submit buttons, people had a lot more response rates in terms of people filling out their forms, right? And so even simple changes from submit to enter now if it's a contest, right? That symbolizes action. Those simple little word changes can have huge impacts on conversion rates. And so it's people think about testing their way through and they think about all these very complex things when really some small changes have great impact on things like a submit button, right? And who would have thought that?
All in the details, right?
Right, exactly. And it's all about testing, right? And so for like email, if you want to, instead of saying submit, like subscribe, right? Most people understand what subscribe is. And so if you're asking somebody to give you their email address, what do you want them to do? You want them to subscribe to your information. So small changes like that just help people kind of understand what are they giving your information for.
What are you trying to get them to do? I love it.
Exactly.
In the industry conversion metrics, Higher Ed Forum reports just an 8% conversion rate, which is lower than average. And I know working in higher ed, that's very much similar to what we're getting. I mean, honestly, we're lucky if we're getting an 8% conversion rate on some of our forums. So what factors do you think contribute to this lower number in higher ed specifically?
Yeah, so one of the things that we looked at was kind of form usage. And so if you look at the most types of used forms in higher ed, it was surveys, contact forms, and event registrations. And as we looked across all of those types of forms, contact forms actually have the lowest conversion rate, right? So their conversion rate hovers at about, I think it was about 3%. And so if that is a higher used form in higher ed, that's going to contribute to the lower conversion rate, right? And so one of the things that ways that higher ed marketers can think differently is instead of having a contact us form, like why not hold a contest, right? If you really want to engage somebody, if you want to engage students and you're trying to get them to give you information, hold a simple contest, right? Like what are the things that you can do to get those students engaged, and they'll offer up their information, right? When you talk about contact forms or surveys, it's all about engaging in a different way. Surveys, you're asking people for some information about them. Usually you're giving them something in return, right? Same thing for events. Those typically have higher conversion rates. And so contact forms is a very passive thing. You run across a website, it's got a contact form. How many people are like really want to give you just their information in a blank
No
box,
one.
Right? Exactly. So that's one of the things that, as we looked at the data, higher ed tends to use a lot of contact forms, and so we said, find other ways. For what are the other forms that you can use? Don't just rely on a simple contact form to get information. Think of creative ways that you can get people engaged with your content, with your promotion, and then capture that information and at the right setting, right?
I love your example of essentially finding out opportunities of how to illustrate it's advantageous for the consumer to be doing this. You know, give them incentives, give me a reason to fill out this form, give me a reason to give you this information. So with that, what is your favorite thing you've seen that people have given out as an incentive to fill out forms?
Well, that is one of the trickiest things, right? Because if you have an iPad, for instance, everybody is going to give you their information for an iPad, right? And so I think it's contextual to what is it that, right? If you just want a bunch of eyeballs, then go give an iPad away. But if it's targeted at a direct, if it's a very direct audience that you're trying to capture their information from, find the thing that's going to engage them most. So again, if it's students, maybe students would love a gas card, right?
Yeah.
How many students want to go home on the weekends or want to go on a trip, and a $50 gas card would be much more value than an iPad, right? And so it's thinking about those kind of unique ways to get people engaged. There's a ton of stuff that you can do on social media. Spotify playlists, like if you give somebody not a Spotify playlist but a Spotify premium account, right? We just launched a new thing where you can actually embed forms in Facebook. So you can embed a Formstack form in Facebook. And so you think about, could you give away a Spotify premium account, capture all that information where students are on Facebook, and you have a very compelling giveaway, right? You have a very compelling contest where really what you're trying to get is the students' information, but you do it in a where they are, very compelling offer, and you get those engagements rates up, way up.
And for all of us watching, anyone who's doing engagement surveys for professionals, we like the gas cards too. So if you could hand those out, that'd be awesome. I'd love a little mini vacation.
Exactly.
So I have to ask, what is the most bizarre incentive you've seen sent out there? There's got to be a weird one where you're like, that's really wacky, and like, and maybe it's not effective. I'm just curious about, like, what is the weirdest incentive you've seen for filling out a form?
Um, well, I don't know if it's really bizarre, but I think one of the interesting things is you look at across like affiliate marketing or some of the other kind of big ticket items, and they're giving away like cruises for like survey responses and things like that, where you're like, how does that ever come back? And I always wonder if they actually give away some of the stuff that they're actually saying. Again, I think it's when you're talking about eyeballs versus a very direct audience, what are the things that people are willing to give away? I'm trying to think of anything specific. I'm not pulling anything directly out of my head. I'll have to think of something, and I'm sure there are crazy things out there.
I know when I was at the University of Florida, our off-campus marketing or off-campus housing locations were so competitive. And you're exactly right. They give out the cruises and the spring break vacations, and they were giving out mopeds, which I thought was just, I mean, like little scooters, and I mean that's really cool. And my favorite was there was a group that was giving out sneakers. So if you filled out their I don't know if it was a form or gave some kind of interest that you were looking at living in one of their locations. They were giving out sneakers, and I thought, wow, it's specific.
Well, it's funny. I was at an event last year. It was a search engine strategies, and a company was giving away custom-made sneakers. And so if you found them throughout the trade show, if you filled out, I think it was like an iPad form, you filled out information or you took a picture of somebody with the sneakers on, they would give you custom sneakers. So I have seen that. That's it, but that's very cool, right? Like, who doesn't want their own custom sneaker built, right?
And they're really neat looking sneakers. There's some cool stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah.
So all right, cool. Back on topic. Sorry, guys. No,
no, it's good. I love it.
So you also include data about the most popular or highest converting web forms. So what forms might encourage more responses, and how can higher ed marketers implement those types of forms?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to contest forms are huge, right? As we found, 28% of people respond to contest forms. Surveys is 21%, event registrations are I think 11%. And again, you think about those types of forums, it's actively engaging somebody to say, hey, here's something cool. Give me your information and I'll give you something back. And right. And as you think about that from a consumer or from any kind of standpoint, if you're going to ask me for my time, I usually want something back. And so that's where these types of forums have a much higher engagement, because people are willing to give you information if there's something on the back end for them. And again, it's not about like the iPad, or it's not about the big ticket item. It's about what is it that is important to your audience. So like housing, you mentioned housing. I've seen a lot of creative things in housing, but like, for some kids, it may be extra money on their meal cards, right? Like if you can win $50 extra, like that's another pizza that you can buy on Thursday night, right? So those are the types of things when you think about student housing. Like, it doesn't have to be an iPad to get somebody engaged. It's something that's very compelling, something very to that kind of specific market that you're trying to reach, and that's what will make people kind of become more engaged.
So, in a tip for some of the marketers out there, if you're trying to decide what type of incentive to use, do you give out an iPad? Do you give out money on a gift card? Do you give out those custom sneakers? The best advice I have, and you might be able to back me up on this, Chris, is ask your customer. So just ask them, what would you like? Would you like a gift card? Would you be more likely to fill something out if you were getting a iPad or a cruise or whatever? And you'd be surprised. Just throw it out there on social media, and you'd be surprised how many people will tell you exactly what they want. And then there you go.
That's so true. And we've actually done surveys where we don't give away anything, and then we send it to a group that we don't give away anything. We send it to another group. We give like a $5 coffee card, and it's amazing what like a $5 coffee card people are willing to give you. It doesn't have to be huge, right? Yeah. It just has to be something compelling. And who doesn't love $5 coffee, like go to Starbucks on your way to work and it's a free coffee for one day. Like it's those are the kind of things. It's the small things. And if you ask people, most people aren't going to say like I want a cruise to fill out a survey. They're going to be like I want $20 Amazon gift card. Like that makes people's days, right?
Honestly, some days that coffee is much more appealing than a cruise. It's like, oh, just wake me up.
Exactly.
Well, we have a question from Laura Thrasher on Twitter. And again, if you have any questions, please put them on Twitter using the hashtag HigherEdLive. So this is from Laura Thrasher. Do you have any suggestions for increasing form conversions by using social media?
Say that again. Hold on.
Do you have any suggestions for increasing form conversions by using social media? So you talked about using Facebook for forms and things like that. Is there anything we can do with social media to increase the conversion rate?
Yeah, I think so. I did mention, and I don't want to plug our product specifically, but we do have a Facebook embed where you can actually embed a form right within Facebook, and so that what that does is it allows people to engage right on the platform, right? And so it's all about where are the people having a conversation. So whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's on Facebook, it's about providing the right form at the right time. And so finding out where do your customers or where do your students, where do your constituents hang out, find that first, right? And that's the most important thing. Then it's what kind of content, how do you feed into that conversation? And so if it's an event, Facebook's great for events, right? Because people are active on there. People are already used to Facebook events, and so event registrations on Facebook are probably very good, right? On Twitter, it's a very fast medium, and so what you want to do is like surveys are probably very good on Twitter, right? Because people can see them multiple times. You can post post a tweet from your account multiple times, have people engaging at very different times of the day, and surveys are very quick and they don't have to take up a lot of time, whereas an event, somebody has to be sitting down thinking about can they attend it, can they not? And so it's all about the medium. And so if you can find the right type of form for the right type of medium, I think you can be very, very engaging and social. I think the other thing is, right, you have captive audiences within social media for a very short time. And so it's writing compelling copy, right? Like why does somebody want to attend your event? Why does somebody want to fill out your survey? Find the ways to write that compelling copy, not just, hey, take my survey. It's win a $20 gas card, give me some information. You know, it's that compelling copy within the medium as well.
It's all about the details, like you said before.
It is.
So what report features are the most active times that people, the report, haha, I can speak English. The report features the most active times that people can complete certain types of forms. So what time should higher ed marketers be promoting the different types of online forms for a better conversion rate?
Yeah, so this is one of the most interesting kind of things in the conversion report was that there, just like I mentioned, email, like right, there's a lot of research that says when should you send your email, and like surprisingly enough, like Friday afternoons, people are sitting in front of their computer after lunch, right? From like 1 to 2 o'clock, 1 to 3 o'clock, it's a great time to send email because people are captive, they're sitting at their desk, they're doing something after lunch. So what we found was, so for instance, surveys from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. are a great time for people to fill out surveys. Orders and payments happen between 11 and 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. And so you think about orders, right? 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Somebody is probably sitting down at their desk, having lunch, ordering stuff online, right? So if you think about, right? And so that happens. 12 to 3 online donations. Again, there's probably some overlap between lunchtime and when people are kind of coming back to their desks, or they have some, you know, that 3 o'clock, you need an extra coffee. You're like, hey, I need to go do a donation, or I need to go do something on the computer. And so those are the types of things. So those are some stats. Event registrations 1 to 4 p.m. Was a crucial time for people filling out events. So you know, I think it goes to show, like, if you think about practically when people are doing certain activities, when are they sitting at their desk, when are they, you know, when are they kind of surfing the internet, and so you think about like alumni donations. A lot of people are probably sitting after lunch, kind of waiting to get back into their workday, and that's
Digesting.
yep, they're digesting, they're reading their
Yep.
favorite, blog or whatever. So there's some very key points in the day that you can hit people up and try to get some of that information from them.
That's so smart, and it makes sense because I mean you're exactly right. You're right after work. You're sitting there. You're digesting. You're less hangry. So that's one of my favorite expressions. Is are you hangry?
Yes.
Cracks me up. So they're sitting there. They they're full and just kind of like, okay, what can I do before I jump back into the grind? That's
Right.
smart.
And
That's really
yeah,
smart.
and one of the things, so contests, I mentioned contests have one of the highest converting. One of the interesting things is that at 8 p.m., that was a high time for contests. And so you think about somebody is sitting down watching TV, or they're interacting on the web, on Twitter or Facebook or whatever at home, and it's a great time for them to enter a contest, promote that after hours, because people probably are looking for something to do on that at that time. So there's lots of interesting information there if you kind of dive into it and say, how do I engage with my customers at the right time?
Well, and we have a question from Greg. I'm sorry right now. I'm going to be mispronouncing your name, but I'm going to do my best. From Greg, Wand Schneider. Juan Schneider. I hope I did that right. So we have a question from him. How do we make surveys and forms that are accessible to people with disabilities? For example, assistive technology. So many programs and screen readers don't read well for surveys and forms. I think that's a really, really good topic because I think that web accessibility, specifically WCAG 2.0 and the Section 508 stuff, is a very hot topic on nearly every campus across the country. So how do we make sure that the surveys and forms are?
Yeah, so one of the things, so we are a 508 compliant form builder. I think one of the things is looking at how do you, are there services out there if you're using a third-party form builder? Are there 508 compliant form builders out there? 508 compliance is not just about higher ed and government. It's about making all websites more accessible, right? And so it is important to find a 508 compliant form builder. There are some tools out there that you can use. We actually have 508checker.com, which is a free tool that you can go out and you can scan a web form URL and see if it is 508 compliant. And it actually gives you tips and tricks on how to make it 508 compliant. So there's some standards out there that you can take a look at. There's some tools out there like 508 Checker. And test and see. But if you are using third-party form builders, look to see if they are 508 compliant, right? If you're building your own or building your own forms, there are some services and some scripts and things like that that allow you to be 508 compliant, but it's very hard, right? It's about making sure that the things that you put on your forms are accessible to readers, and that's a very hard thing to do if you are coding your own forms. So we have a vested interest in saying go out and find the third-party form builders, but if you are doing it, that's something that you have to be aware of.
That's so cool that you guys do that. I mean, sincerely, that is one of the most challenging things when building any website, using any content management system, even if you're coding, is making sure you're compliant. And that might be a good topic for one of our upcoming shows, is web accessibility. Additionally, the report talks about the importance of email marketing and social media in form promotion. So one point I found interesting was that the average smartphone user looks at his phone 150 times a day. That's nuts.
Yes.
I can't imagine doing anything 150 times a day. So how can form users consider that data to maximize conversion?
Yeah, it's all about, again, when we were talking about social and contests and things like that, it's about finding where your customers are, where your constituents are, and promoting those things accordingly, right? And so when you talk about, a lot of people put stock into social media and Twitter and Facebook, but one of the things that we found was that email marketing still drives the most amount of form conversions, right? Email marketing, a lot of people have said, email marketing is dead. It's kind of this old marketing tactic, right? And social is kind of the new thing. But when we look at it, email marketing still drives a huge number of of form conversions, right? It still drives interaction with forms. And so don't forget about email. It's one of the most basic things that all marketers do, right? And so we found 61% said email marketing drives the most traffic to their forms. That's a huge number. And so it's all about using the mediums that you have at your disposal and using them in the right way. Email is great for getting back in touch with people, right? So you get information on a contest on Facebook, for instance, but use email to follow up on that engagement, right? Start a conversation where people are, where the people are that you want to get the information from. Start that conversation where they are, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Use email to re-engage, right? Re-engagement, it's about a survey. It's about feedback. It's about getting a little bit more. And you can use forms in a very simple way to do that. And so it's using the right tools at the right time. How do you start a conversation? How do you re-engage with somebody? And then how do you kind of close that loop? And what's that final kind of offering that you're trying to get to close? So that's kind of how we look at it. And I think it's funny that email sometimes gets a bad rap, but it's so effective still.
I think you're exactly right. And the biggest thing is like what you're talking about is be very intentional about what you're doing when it comes to the marketing conversion funnel. So you have to find ways of kind of generating the interest and getting them more engaged and there are different types of marketing strategies to kind of convert them down to ultimately doing what you want them to do, and that's really smart. And I think oftentimes in higher ed we're just oh wait, the Facebook sounds like a good idea, or oh wait, it's an email sounds like a good idea, and we're not being as intentional as we could as to what we're trying to get them to do. So a good example is if you're trying to get students to live on campus your second year, you can let them know about living on campus. You can let them know about, we have all these great facilities and all that. But when it comes down to it, they're living there. So really driving them in that awareness phase is not really as effective. So let's find other means of really, highlighting the stuff that we have. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the things that I bring up a lot of times in surveys, right? Everybody does a ton of surveys, but I always ask people, like, why are you doing the survey, right? What is it that you're really trying to get after? And a lot of people want to throw the kitchen sink at a survey, but it's about being intentional, right? It's about what is the reason that we're trying to ask these questions, and if you can narrow that question down very, very succinctly and very kind of in a basic way, you say, I want to find out X. Then you drive your questions to find out X, right? If you don't answer that question in the forefront, you just have all these questions and you have all these data points and you think, what am I going to do with all this information? But if you have a very direct reason of what you're asking for, then it allows you to follow back up with the people who didn't meet the criteria. You can re-engage those people in a conversation through another form or through email marketing or through whatever. So it's always about asking that question, being very intentional, like you said, and then get to the gist of what questions can I ask to pull that information.
I love that. Have a call to action.
Exactly.
Give them a reason, like, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to buy something? You want them to fill something out? Have a call to action in doing all your marketing. See, you get it. So in an internal survey to your customers, over 60% reported that they use email marketing to promote their forums. So what are some of the best practices when it comes to the email marketing that we can use to lead email subscribers to their forums?
Yeah, I think, like we talked about, it's being intentional, right? It's about why are we re-engaging with the customer? If we're just re-engaging because we want to just send them another email, that's probably bad form, right? There's always going to be this layer of kind of fatigue. If you email people too much, there's going to be fatigue, right? And so it's being very conscious when to send an email, when not to send an email. And then it's about being very clear, being very direct. Like, what do you want the people to do with your email? We found in our email marketing programs that just a simple paragraph and a simple call to action gets people to click over to a blog post or a form or anything like that much more easily than if you have this very long email. You try to tell a great story, right? And every marketer wants to tell a story.
Good point.
Yep. And you have to be to the point. I think a lot of it is in design too, right? Test out your design. You can have some very pretty HTML that converts terribly. You can also have some ugly plain text that converts awesome, right? So it's all about testing that messaging. But I think the other thing is have a very kind of clear offer. What are you offering in exchange for the information that you want? And then the final thing is about brand, right? So we spend a lot of time when we create email templates, and we have this very kind of very value-driven, very brand-driven experience in email. And oftentimes we'll link out and we'll link out to this form that looks like junk, right? It's not branded. It doesn't have our logo. It has no, once you click on it, you lose that experience. And this happens across websites, right? So it's all about how do you deliver that last bit. It's that at Formstack, we call it the last 10%, right? How do you deliver that last 10%? And if you create a very branded, well-designed, well-created form, a well-thought-out form, people will click on that. They'll open up your email, they'll click on it, and they'll fill out that form. If that brand experience degrades after you click on the link, people are going to be like, what the heck is this, right? So there are multiple steps. Have a clear call to action, test out kind of the messaging, have very succinct messaging, and then have a great branded experience from your email to your form. Oop, I think I lost you. I think you're on mute.
I was on mute there. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So I have to go on a bit of a nerd sidetrack here. Have you ever seen the movie Hook?
Yes, I have. The one with...
You're saying bad form?
Bad form, yes.
Bad form, Jack, bad form. Got me very excited. And anyone out there who has not seen the movie Hook with Robert De Niro and Robin Williams and a bunch of fantastic actors, go watch it tonight. It's on Netflix. It's awesome. That's not really promotion what we're talking about, but you're talking about bad form.
I always think about bad form and then run home, Jack. Run home, Jack.
And sometimes, web forms apparently can teach you to do that.
There you go. Way to bring it around.
All back.
Awesome. I love it.
So additionally, what are some of the general best practices that the Marketing Live audience can apply to the existing web forms to make them more accessible to their markets? I talked a little bit about this, but...
Yeah, I think, if you bring this conversation to a wrap, I think it's all about where are the people that you're trying to target? Where do they hang out, right? That's the first level. How do we start to engage with them? And then what are the types of forms that we can get people to engage with us? It's finding those subtle interactions, those smaller interactions to get a little bit of information, whether it's a contest, whether it's an event, and whether it's through social media or your own website, right? It's finding those right mechanisms. It's about creating good user experience. I talked about branding from an email side. A lot of times what we do see is this bad experience on the form, right? We spend all this money on our website design, we spend all this money on our brand, and then we give poor experience when we have somebody go register through a third-party invite service, or we have a janky form that doesn't have any of our information on it or any of our brand. It's about creating that trust, right? You have to create a great experience from your social media side when you first engage somebody to your website to that form component, because your form component is what drives the real value, right? It's what gives you the information as a higher ed marketer. And then I think it's about finding the right times, right? It's finding the right ways to connect and the right times to connect with people. What are the forms that are going to get those people to connect with you? But then a little bit deeper, what are the times, right? And so if you can start to put all that together as somebody in the education space, I think it makes your job easy, right? Or not easy, but easier if you can think through some of those components. And it's about decreasing friction. If you can decrease friction where the pain points are and where people are kind of feeling those, whether it's the brand, whether it's interacting on a website, or whether it's interacting through social, if you can find ways to decrease that friction point, then I think you start to see those conversions go up. And ultimately what you get is better data through forms, better information, and then a way to re-engage, like we talked about through email marketing and some of the other forms. It's if you can get that little bit of information, you can then go and re-engage with your students or your alumni, your faculty, whomever it is that you're targeting.
And I love that you're bringing that up. I mean, it really drives down to any type of marketing that you're doing, any type of sales that you're trying to do. It really comes down to the user experience. So you can make things, like you said, branded, they can be really pretty and all that, but if the email is super long, you're just not going to be, user experience is not, it's not good. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be going through a bunch of things. If you have a form where you have, 1,000 questions that you have to answer and it's taking forever, and I'm having issues with the submit button, I'm having issues with accessibility or whatever, you're having a bad user experience. And so anytime we can try to, in any kind of marketing, really just look at each of the different steps. Where are people falling off? Where are they like, you know what, I'm having issues adding it to my cart, or I'm having issues, I'm having issues on your website. I can't submit the form, or whatever it is. Identifying what the different stages are in the purchasing process and the conversion process, and look at what the user experience is. Put yourself in the user's side. How often do we say, all right, I'm going to pretend like I am the student coming in, or I'm the professional that's answering the survey, or whatever it might be. What are they experiencing? And you're exactly right, that's so important, and we're not doing that as much as we should be. And it can be really challenging. And we were just at a COI last week in Washington, D.C., and that seems to be the biggest challenge that across every university and every across the country and even across the world, because COI, international.
International, there you go.
International, they're all having that issue of what experience are we creating that's complicated. I was speaking with a young lady today from the University of Hawaii, and she was talking about how when they're doing different actions for the student, they're changing the syllabus last minute, they're canceling classes last minute. Here are some challenges that the user is experiencing. Well, no wonder the retention rate is at 18%, 19%. You have to see how you can make it as easy for the consumer as possible. And I think it's really important, you're exactly right, to do that in the forms. You want the forms to be really easy to fill out, really easy to have them to be submitted, and get to the point. If you can ask 40 questions and you can actually ask them in 10 and get some of the really key things that you want to know, sometimes it's better to be succinct and get to the point, because users having to go through 40 different steps instead of 10, they're going to be a little bit happier.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we stress a lot. We have a feature called conditional logic, and I always explain it. It's like when you're filling out a paper form, and it's the skip this if this does not pertain to you. There are form builders out there that have conditional logic, and it allows you to show and hide questions based on how people answer forms. And that's at Formstack we found that increases conversions way up, because people don't have to go through 20 questions that don't pertain to them, right? So if they answer, do you live on campus, and they say yes, then you can skip a whole section of questions for them. And if they say no, then you say, okay, here are the pertinent questions to you, right? And it's about that friction, and you talked about kind of testing your way through. It's what questions are people not answering? Like, where do people fall off, right? If everybody gets to that second page of your form and falls off, maybe you should create a one-page form, right? Like those are the questions you should ask yourself. Again, it's about the details. And if you can do some of that when you're thinking about forms and conversions, I think you'll start to see much better rates. Because again, we put a lot of emphasis on our programs. How are we getting people's attention? But we don't put in that last 10%. We don't put enough emphasis on how are we getting people to take that action that we want them to do. And forms are a huge part of that, because as I said, they're the gateway to that engagement.
Well, and I love that you're saying that. And I want to go off script here for a second and ask some more leading questions about Formstack, and a little bit more about the products and the different things that you offer, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I've used 4C in the past when I was at the University of Michigan, and that is, for anyone who doesn't know, it is an online form that people fill out in order to talk about their web experience. And there's some good points and bad points to it. The conversion rates that you have from Formstack, I have to be honest, are a lot higher. And looking at the way some of the forms are built and all that kind of stuff, I am much more impressed than what I've seen at 4C. So hypothetically, could I do an online survey of the web user experience and use your form to do that? Or what are some of the different types of spots that I can use your company and your products in my role, doing digital marketing, doing customer conversion, getting information from students? What are some ways that I can use Formstack specifically? Because you're getting me all excited with all this stuff. I'm thinking about new ideas.
Yeah, no. So when you talk about online form builders, right? We play in a very weird space, because we're kind of these generalists. If you look at kind of apps and products out there in the marketplace, we're this very kind of generalist application. And so we can do, there are other very specific survey tools or very event-driven tools. Why somebody comes to us, whether they're in higher ed or digital marketing across other organizations, is we provide an opportunity that you can build any type of form. And so you can do I call it, I kind of, in my mind, I have this circle of engagement, right? And so you talk about, well, I want a lead generation form, right? I want to just capture that little bit of information. And so we can do that. We can do simple lead gen forms. We can do contact forms. So as we found out, contact forms are about 3% conversion rate, so stay away from those.
Really?
Yeah, they're the lowest kind of converting, because I think they're very passive, right? People just they see contact forms everywhere. Yeah. So you don't really want to just throw your name into any old contact form. You want to have a reason, right? So we can do.
I'll contact you if I want to contact you. Otherwise.
Right. Yeah. Like there's no reason for me to just put my name into a contact form unless there's a very I want a piece of information from you and I have to fill this out, right? So we can do those simple lead gen forms, and then surveys or event registrations or online ordering. Like we can do all that. We have payment processors that you can do online ordering from, and so it's that second piece, right? What is that kind of more advanced form? And we can do those advanced forms. And then it's about re-engaging with customers. And so again, whether it's surveys or follow up on an event, right? You hold an event registration, you want to follow up with somebody. And so you want to get a little bit of feedback. And so we can do that too. And that's kind of the difference between us and other form builders or other kind of very point-specific people or apps, is that we can do that whole gamut, right? And so when you talk about engaging your customers or engaging consumers, we can fill in all those places. And so you don't need a survey tool, you don't need an event tool, you don't need just a CMS tool for a contact form, right? We can do all of that stuff in one application. And then we provide a lot of, like I said, the friction points. It's conditional logic. How do you show and hide fields? And so we try to make it very easy to capture more, right? Capture more responses, capture more surveys, capture more event registrations, whatever it is that you're trying to do, we try to make it very easy and reduce that friction.
Thanks. So basically, you're going to do my job for me and make it really easy.
What's funny, and well, we were talking to somebody, and they were like, if they would have known about our tool prior to when they did, they're like, I could have not hired 2 people. Yep. And because they had people building forms and putting data in and doing a lot of this kind of manual process, and what's funny is, and I don't want to plug us too much, but
no, do it. That's what I'm asking you.
there are tools out there that just people don't realize, right? They either have like a simple form builder in their CMS, or they have they're using kind of a script, and they get a bunch of email submissions, but it's very messy to handle emails submissions via email, right? And so we provide a very clean database where you can store all that information. You can run reporting, all that kind of stuff. Where if you do these kind of ad hoc tools, it gets very messy and very kind of hard to manage. And so that's the kind of value that we're trying to bring, is how do we solve some of that pain point.
That's so nice. I mean, I have to be honest with you, that's one of the things that we're working with right now, is that we're using so many different tools for different things, and it's not just the building the tool, it's the maintaining it afterwards and making sure that it's working on websites and making sure that it's working on it's in conjunction with the other different products that we're using on the back end to organize the emails and all that, and sometimes you have just way too many products to manage, and it would just be so nice to just have it in one spot and make it seamless. So this has been absolutely fantastic. I would like to thank you so much for your time, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. Next week, there's going to be some more Higher Ed Live promotions, and the week following, we're going to have another Higher Ed Live marketing show with my good co-host. So there's going to be a lot of great stuff coming up soon, so make sure to tune in. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and do you have anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No. I just want to say thank you for having me on, and I appreciate it. And I'm gonna run home.
You're gonna run home. Run home, Chris. Run home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the folks that are tuning in now, they're like, "What is it? It's a thing. It's good phone, Chris." Yeah, I'm super cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great day, and go green.
All right. Thank you.